I could hear the echo of his voice before I even looked up. Ryan Mitchell stood tall in the courtroom, his expensive suit pressed to perfection, his chin raised with the confidence of a man who thought he had already won. "I'm taking half your millions, including your grandmother's estate," he declared, his words rolling through the chamber like an announcement of victory. "My name is Melissa Turner. I am 44 years old, a businesswoman from Austin, Texas, and never once in my life did I imagine I would be sitting at the defendant's table in divorce court, facing the man who once promised to love me. Ryan had not only betrayed our marriage, but had come here today to strip me of everything my grandmother had worked a lifetime to build." The room carried the weight of judgment. Rows of dark wooden benches were filled with spectators leaning forward, eager for a scandalous story. A few local reporters had their pens ready, their eyes darting between Ryan and me. I knew exactly what they were thinking. Another wealthy woman about to lose her fortune to a smooth-talking husband, but they had no idea what was coming. Judge Richardson, a stern woman with sharp eyes behind her glasses, presided over the case. She reviewed the opening statements with the calm of someone who had seen dozens of couples destroy each other across this very room. Still, I sensed she had never witnessed the turn this case was about to take. Ryan smirked at me from across the aisle, the same smile that once made me believe I had found a partner, not a predator. My hands tightened around the leather strap of my purse where a sealed envelope rested. That envelope contained the truth, the protection, and the ending Ryan never expected. As the judge addressed me, asking if I had any response, I stood. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor," I said, looking directly at Ryan, "I believe the court needs to see something first." Before that day in court, before the smirk and the suit and the threat of taking half my life away, there was a different Ryan Mitchell. Or at least there was the version of him I first met. It was 3 years after my grandmother passed, and I was still carrying the weight of her absence. She had been the one constant in my life, the person who believed in me when no one else did. Losing her left me pouring everything into my small consulting firm, Turner Analytics, with no space left for companionship. That was when Ryan walked into my life at a business conference in Dallas. He was polished, confident, and seemed genuinely interested in the work I did. While most men's eyes glazed over at the mention of data models and small business growth strategies, Ryan leaned in, asking thoughtful questions. "You're brilliant," he said almost in awe. "I've never met anyone who understands numbers the way you do." For a woman who had spent years hearing that she was too serious, too focused, too independent, his admiration felt like sunlight. Ryan quickly became the antidote to my loneliness. He planned dinners at cozy restaurants, weekend getaways to the hill country, and even showed up at my office with flowers just because. It wasn't just romance, it was timing. I was tired, vulnerable, and ready to believe that maybe fate had finally given me a partner. Looking back, I can see the subtle signs I ignored. The way he always chose the most expensive bottles of wine, how he bragged about connections at high-end golf clubs, even though his own career as a pharmaceutical sales manager never seemed to justify the lifestyle he flaunted. But in those days, I told myself he was just generous, that he wanted to treat me the way I deserved after years of hard work. One evening, as we sat by the riverfront watching the city lights flicker on the water, Ryan turned to me and said, "Melissa, life is too short to spend it alone. You deserve someone who sees how special you are." I believed him. I wanted so badly to believe that someone could see me, the woman behind the spreadsheets and late nights, and not just my bank account. I didn't know then that Ryan wasn't just seeing me. He was calculating me. 9 months after that first conference in Dallas, Ryan dropped to one knee at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Austin skyline. A string quartet played softly, and the ring he held sparkled under the city lights. I remember gasping not just at the gesture, but at the speed of it all. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind her warnings about men who rushed things. But Ryan silenced every doubt with his charm. "Why wait?" he said, smiling up at me. "When I already know you're the one I want forever." I said, "Yes." Within days, my best friend and attorney, Claire Hudson, pulled me aside. "Melissa, you need a prenuptial agreement." she insisted. You've built your business from the ground up, and you may inherit more from your family. Love is beautiful, but contracts protect you when love isn't enough. First I bristled. A prenup felt cold, almost insulting, like I was questioning Ryan's sincerity. Still, I trusted Claire's judgment. With reluctance, I asked Ryan about it. His reaction surprised me. He laughed. Course, darling. Whatever makes you comfortable. I'm not marrying you for your money. I'm marrying you for you. He signed the agreement without hesitation, barely glancing at the clauses Claire had drafted. He even joked, "Love doesn't need fine print. But hey, I'll sign it if it helps you sleep at night." The pen scratched across the paper, his signature bold and carefree. I felt a wave of relief. If Ryan could sign something so serious with such ease, surely it meant he had no ulterior motives. The prenup became a tucked-away document locked in my attorney's file cabinet, and I allowed myself to believe I was safe. Ryan's light-hearted attitude convinced me that I'd overthought everything. That night, as he slipped the ring back on my finger and toasted to our future, I pushed my grandmother's warning aside. I told myself I had found a man who loved me for who I was, not for the wealth I had or might one day inherit. I didn't realize then that his laughter wasn't reassurance. It was strategy. 18 months into our marriage, everything shifted with a single phone call. My grandmother's estate, the one she had quietly built through decades of discipline and sacrifice, finally came to me. The inheritance included her home, carefully managed investments, and a trust fund worth just over $3.2 million. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, stunned as the numbers sank in. I hadn't expected that level of wealth, and I certainly hadn't prepared for the changes it would bring. Ryan's reaction was the first sign that something was wrong. His eyes lit up in a way I had never seen before. Not with joy for me, but with hunger. 3.2 million, he repeated slowly, almost tasting the words. Then he grinned. Melissa, we're rich. The emphasis on we should have been my warning, but I was still too overwhelmed to notice. I thought he was simply excited for us as a couple. Within 6 months, Ryan quit his job, claiming he wanted to support me and explore new opportunities. What it really meant was living off my inheritance. He leased a luxury car, joined an exclusive golf club, and booked vacations to destinations I hadn't even dreamed of. When I asked where the money was coming from, his answer was always the same: we're partners. Why question it? I tried to be understanding at first. Marriage, I told myself, was about compromise. But as the credit card bills piled up and failed investments drained accounts, I began to see the truth. One of his ventures, backing a trendy bar his friend wanted to open, burned through $40,000 in less than a year. He shrugged it off like it was pocket change. Meanwhile, the man who once praised my intelligence now dismissed my concerns. Melissa, stop worrying. What's the point of money if you don't enjoy it? He'd say, pouring another glass of wine at some overpriced restaurant. It was as if the inheritance had transformed Ryan into someone I barely recognized. Or maybe more painfully, it revealed who he had been all along. It wasn't just the spending that broke us. It was the arrogance that came with it. Ryan began introducing himself at social gatherings as an entrepreneur, bragging about our fortune as though it had come from his own hands. At the country club, I overheard him telling another couple that the inheritance was family money, implying it had always belonged to both of us. The lie stung. My grandmother had trusted me with her legacy, and now Ryan was parading it as if it were his birthright. The tension at home grew unbearable. Every time I questioned a purchase or suggested caution, Ryan turned defensive. One evening, after I confronted him about the failed bar investment, he snapped, "Stop acting like this is your money, Melissa. Everyone knows you married me because you were lonely. I gave you a life and you should be grateful." His words landed like a slap. For years I had believed he loved me. In that moment I realized he had simply calculated me. The arguments grew sharper, cutting deeper with each round. Ryan accused me of being stingy, cold, unwilling to share. I accused him of bleeding me dry. The man who once brought me flowers now left bills on the counter like little reminders of his dominance. He started to spend more nights out, coming home late, his cologne heavy with the scent of clubs and whiskey. When I pressed him, he laughed. "Relax. You'd be lost without me. You need me more than I need you." But I didn't laugh. I started to see through the charm, the smile, the carefully constructed facade. My grandmother had warned me about men like this, men who saw women as stepping stones. I had ignored her voice then, but now it echoed louder than ever. The cracks in our marriage weren't just lines. They were canyons. And I knew sooner or later I would have to make a choice. Keep letting him drain me or finally reclaim my life. The breaking point came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Ryan had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to look. What I found made my stomach twist. There were emails between Ryan and a divorce attorney, carefully outlining strategies to maximize his settlement. He had been planning this for months, discussing timing assets, even ways to claim emotional contributions as justification for a larger share. He wasn't just reckless, he was deliberate. I sat in silence that night, staring at the screen, the truth sinking in. The man who once promised forever had been plotting my downfall like a business deal. My heart broke, but alongside the pain came clarity. If Ryan wanted a battle, then he would get one, but it would not end the way he expected. The very next morning I called Claire Hudson, my attorney and longtime friend. When she heard the details, her voice was calm but firm. "Melissa, you still have the prenuptial agreement. That document is stronger than his schemes. We'll be ready." We spent weeks preparing, gathering bank statements, keeping records of every expense, every failed investment, every debt that was in his name alone. Claire reminded me to keep the inheritance separate. And I had done exactly that. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in my own home control. Instead of waiting for Ryan to make the first move, I filed for divorce myself. If he wanted a courtroom spectacle, I would walk into that courtroom with every weapon he had underestimated. Sitting at my desk one evening reviewing the documents with Claire, I whispered to myself, "This ends with me, not him." And in that moment I believed it. The courtroom felt like a stage the morning our trial began. Reporters scribbled notes, spectators leaned forward, and Ryan strutted in like a man about to collect his prize. His lawyer, a polished man in a gray suit named Mark Walters, opened with confidence. "Your Honor, my client is entitled to half of all marital assets, including the substantial inheritance Miss Turner received during the marriage." The words hung in the air like a dagger pointed straight at me. I stayed calm. Across the aisle, Ryan flashed me a victorious smile, the same grin that once convinced me he was safe. Now it only revealed his greed. I glanced at Claire beside me. Her hand rested gently on my arm, steadying me. "Wait for the right moment," she whispered. The judge, firm and measured, turned to me. "Mrs. Turner, do you have any response?" My heart raced, but my voice was steady. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Your Honor, I believe the court should review this document before any discussion of assets continues." Gasp rippled through the room as I walked the envelope to the bench. Judge Richardson broke the seal and began reading. Ryan shifted in his chair, confusion flashing across his face. "What is that?" he demanded, leaning toward his attorney. Walters looked uncertain, his polished veneer cracking as he scanned the pages Judge Richardson held. "It's a prenuptial agreement," the judge announced, her tone even but commanding. "Executed prior to the marriage, signed by both parties, witnessed and notarized. This court will take time to review its contents." The room buzzed with whispers. Reporters scribbled faster, eyes darting between me and Ryan. Ryan's confidence began to crumble. He leaned forward, whispering frantically to Walters. "She never told me it was just a formality." I heard him hiss. Walters pressed a hand to his forehead, already realizing the damage. Meanwhile, Claire sat perfectly still, her calm expression saying everything. Our plan was unfolding exactly as intended. Minutes passed as the judge flipped through the pages. Ryan tapped his fingers nervously, his smirk long gone. Finally, Judge Richardson looked up. This agreement is valid, thorough, and binding. It clearly protects all premarital assets and explicitly defines any inheritance received during the marriage as separate property. Her eyes narrowed at Ryan. Mr. Mitchell, did you sign this document of your own free will? Ryan sputtered. I thought it was just symbolic, Melissa said. The judge cut him off. Did anyone force you to sign? His silence stretched until he muttered, No, Your Honor. The tension in the room shifted, spectators whispering louder now. They could see the tide turning. For the first time, Ryan's mask had slipped, and everyone could see what lay beneath fear. By the second afternoon of testimony, it was clear the tide had fully turned. Judge Richardson, meticulous in her review, read aloud from the agreement for the record. Section 4, Paragraph B. Any inheritance received by either party during the marriage shall be considered separate property and shall not be subject to division upon divorce. The words landed like thunder. Reporters lifted their heads in unison, pens scratching furiously to capture every detail. Ryan gripped the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. That can't be legal, he muttered, but his voice was barely audible over the shuffle of papers. Walters tried one last desperate angle, arguing that Ryan hadn't fully understood the document. The judge was unimpressed. Mr. Walters, your client, signed, waived his right to independent counsel, and confirmed his identity before a notary. Ignorance is not a defense. When she finally delivered her ruling, the silence was absolute. This court recognizes the prenuptial agreement as valid and binding. Mr. Mitchell is entitled to no portion of Mrs. Turner's inheritance or premarital assets. Furthermore, all debts incurred in his name remain his sole responsibility. She paused, her gaze steady on Ryan. The total documented debt stands at $92,000. A stunned hush filled the room, broken only by the faint click of a reporter's camera. Ryan sagged into his chair, his face drained of color. The confident man who had strutted in, expecting millions, now faced nothing but debt and humiliation. I sat quietly, my hands folded in my lap, feeling the calm weight of justice settle over me. When the gavel struck, the sound echoed like closure. The nightmare was over. Ryan had gambled on greed and lost everything, and I, for the first time in years, felt free. In the weeks after the ruling, Ryan's perfect image unraveled piece by piece. The country club suspended his membership when he could no longer pay the dues. The luxury car he had paraded around town was repossessed, leaving him borrowing rides from friends who soon stopped answering his calls. His debts piled higher, creditors circling like vultures. Within 6 months, bankruptcy was the only option left. Word spread quickly through Austin's business circles. Ryan Mitchell, once the charming husband of a successful consultant, had tried to take what wasn't his and failed spectacularly. Women whispered warnings about him, his name becoming a cautionary tale at dinner parties and networking events. The reputation he had carefully polished for years crumbled in a matter of weeks. Eventually, he retreated to his parents' home, starting over at 47 with nothing but resentment and regret. For me, the end of our marriage marked the beginning of something far more powerful. I used part of my inheritance to create the Turner Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping women protect their financial futures. We offered legal workshops on prenuptial agreements, financial planning, and resources for those trapped in toxic marriages. Every time a woman told me she felt stronger, safer, and more prepared because of our work, I thought of my grandmother. Her wisdom had saved me, and now it could save others. Looking back, I don't see myself as a victim of Ryan's greed. I see myself as someone who learned, fought back, and rebuilt. Painful as it was, his betrayal forced me to stand taller and to honor the legacy my grandmother entrusted to me. And in that sense, the inheritance became more than money. It became a shield, a voice, and a chance to give other women the strength to say, "Never again." As I walked out of that courtroom for the last time, sunlight spilling across the courthouse steps, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of lies, manipulation, and fear was gone. Ryan had gambled on greed, and greed had written his downfall. What remained for me was peace and purpose. His story is a reminder that love without respect becomes control, and control without limits becomes destruction. A marriage built on taking will always collapse under its own weight. Ryan thought he could charm, threaten, and scheme his way into a fortune. Instead, he left with nothing but debt and the lesson that paper, signatures, and truth carry more weight than arrogance ever will. For those listening, take this to heart. Protecting yourself does not mean you love less. It means you honor the years of sacrifice, the work, the legacy you carry. My grandmother's advice, once brushed aside, became the safeguard that preserved everything she left me. I hope my story urges someone out there to listen to their own inner voice and to never apologize for setting boundaries. If this story has resonated with you, I invite you to share it. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories of resilience and justice. And share this video with someone who might need the reminder. Your worth is never defined by someone else's greed. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living free, secure, and unbroken.